What's up, everyone? So since this channel is going to be so focused on tennis strategy, I thought it'd be helpful to start with an intro video about strategy and how to try to change it if it's not working while you are playing. So I think the biggest thing to start when thinking about strategy is a lot of it is rooted in a player's own strengths. So your strategy should never really be something where you're going out and doing something that you're totally uncomfortable doing in a match. It should be, if you're too uncomfortable, you should be working on it a little bit more in practice so that you're able to execute it effectively when you're under pressure. So what I'm getting at here is you need to first understand what type of player you are and understand what you do well and be comfortable with that. So if you are a counterpuncher who is, maybe you're fast, you get a lot of balls back, you can mix some heights and spins up, cool, that's you. Maybe you have a big serve, big forehand, and you really look for your +1 patterns and you try to end the point early. That's you. Cool. So you're always going to want your strategy to be playing towards your strengths. I've found that the most successful players when it comes to winning matches are the ones that are comfortable doing what they know how to do and they're comfortable executing it over and over again. So now that we've discussed a little bit about what type of player you might be, when you're going into a match and developing a strategy, it's going to depend on whether or not you know who you're playing. Throughout junior tennis, college tennis, whatever, there's lots of instances where you play people more than once. Maybe you had a teammate play them. Maybe you've just seen them play, seen a few points, so you have at least an idea of something you can do where maybe you're picking on something of theirs and it's a little more specified because you've seen them play. However, there are a lot of times where you're going to go play somebody and you've never heard of them before. You don't want to go out with no plan at all. So if you don't have a plan at all, you're going to be too reactionary in the first few games and you're not going to really know what to do. You want some kind of game plan that you can start, and then you'll just tweak it in those first few games as you start to pick up on things from your opponent. It's a pretty difficult balance, though, because when you're playing tennis, you don't want your mind to be too noisy when you play. You want it to be pretty quiet, but you are still needing to make some slight adjustments in real time and make some fixes, because ultimately tennis is all about problem solving. So once you are, seeing who you're going to play, or maybe you don't know who you're going to play, you can still find some kind of basic plan to run off of. So maybe that's like, you know what, I'm going to start off really high percentage. I'm going to keep all my ground strokes cross court until I get a short ball. I'll change direction and go down the line. Or maybe you're like, you know what, I'm just going to start off going high and heavy to this player's backhand, and we'll see how that works, see how they handle it. Maybe I'm going to do some serve +1 patterns, and I'm really going to work on pulling them off the court and going to the open court. So you just want something that you're able to focus on from the start in a way that you can impose yourself on your opponent. And then as the games develop, you can start to pick up on what specifically is going to make them uncomfortable and what it is about your game that you can really impose on them to be even more successful. So now that we've covered a couple of ways to start off a match, let's say you have your strategy, you have your game plan, you get into a match, and then it's just not working. So the first thing that I see people do that kind of puts them in a little bit of a pickle is they immediately assume that since their strategy isn't working, they need to completely change it, which is not always true because of what we've talked about earlier, to where your strategy should still go off your strengths. So in a match, if I'm more of a counterpuncher and I'm used to hitting a lot of balls to the point, if my opponent is not missing, that doesn't mean I'm going to immediately start pulling the trigger on like the first ball I get my eyeballs on. So sometimes you have to just take your strategy and you have to just fine tune it and do it better and execute it better. So let's say, for example, I'm playing a match and I'm thinking, okay, if I just keep 6 balls in the court, my opponent will miss. And if she's not missing, I might have to hit 8 balls or 10. I don't need to completely change what I'm doing. I just might have to work a little harder. Or maybe I need to hit 8 balls a foot from the baseline. So I need better depth. Or I need to pull them a little bit wider, I need to do a little bit more with the 6, 8, 10 balls that I'm making myself put in the court to get the error from my opponent. So just because your strategy isn't working doesn't mean you need to totally change it. You just might need to fine tune it and do some of it a little bit better. Sure, there are times you're going to want to start throwing in something else. Like maybe I'm finding that, I'm not getting her to miss when I'm hitting the ball deep and I'm moving it around. But if I chip something short, they're very uncomfortable coming forward. So there are times you're going to sprinkle in something else that's maybe a little bit of outside your norm. But ultimately, you want to sit back and think about, what am I doing to get my opponent uncomfortable? How can I fix it? And you're having to do all of this relatively quickly in a match, right? Because especially if you're a college tennis player, a lot of divisions now are going no ad. It can go very, very quickly. And you don't want to find yourself getting down 0-3, 1-4 early on. You want to be able to figure this out quick and start on a very positive note in your matches.